Hello, hello, and welcome. Stress steals our life force at every level of our being, mind, body, and spirit. And personally, I have made a decision, and I'd love for you to join me, that stress can't have my life force anymore, period. Full stop. It's too much energy to give up in any day's time, right? So, in our time together, I'm going to show you 5 steps to stop stress in its tracks and make way to have more peace and calm. And we're calling this peace up. One of the things I've noticed on my sacred health journey is that underneath stress lies peace. Underneath pain lies ease. Underneath fatigue lies energy. Underneath confusion lies clarity and knowing, and I could go on. But the delicious part about this is that peace, energy, ease, and health, it's already in us. We just have to be willing to unearth this treasure and to remove like these, I see them as like wet blankets that get thrown over this treasure. And it doesn't allow it to sort of have a way to come out and to get out of its treasure chest and rise up, so to speak. So that's good news because now we can stop scratching and clawing and grasping for the goods outside of ourselves. It's not that external stuff, that it's not that it isn't good. It's just that we've got to stop putting the cart before the horse, right? So internal alignment, we'll talk about that in a minute. Connecting with this field of intelligent life force, our higher presence, that is what help guides us to our best health choices every time. So when we put the cart before the horse, when we're disconnected and we don't make that connection, then we grasp on the outside. We have that external, need to just kind of pull something in to make things better. And when we're aligned and connected, then every time our health choices are serving for us in that moment. So, if that speaks to you, toss some likes and loves this way if you agree. A warm welcome to you listening live today, and an equally warm welcome if you're watching the replay. Thank you so much for joining. It's so good to be with you. Grab a cup of tea if you like. I'm a tea girl, so I almost always have a cup of tea. And now that we're together, I'd like to invite you to join the conversation, right? Like we're in a virtual world, so it's not like we're sitting around a table having our cup of tea where we can actually talk back and forth together. Put any questions or comments you have. If it is a question, make sure you put the capital letter Q before your question so I be sure and see it. And if I don't see it while we're chatting right this moment, I'll go back and make sure I see and answer and respond to every one of your comments. I love reactions and emojis. That's one of the ways that it feels like we're actually having a reciprocal conversation. So go ahead and be generous with those emojis and reactions and comments. It just all helps to engage a better community, doesn't it? So I have a question for you. How many times a day do you consciously notice stress? Let me know in the comments. Is it once a day, 5 times a day, a dozen, too many to count? I mean, here's the thing, right? Stress has become so common and so like on autopilot that it feels normal. There's this constant undercurrent, and that just feels like it's how it's supposed to be, right? It runs almost constantly under the radar. And that's kind of a big problem. Like we cannot let stress feel that welcome in our system. That would be like your least favorite person coming to your door, knocking on your door, coming in no matter what you say, kind of just, forcing their way in and announcing a lengthy stay. Oh, and by the way, they say, what time is breakfast, lunch, and dinner served? I mean, the nerve, right? Like, anyway, nobody wants that. So I have these 5 steps to peace up with a short and tidy description, as I mentioned, easy to print and post, at your desk, on your bathroom mirror, on your refrigerator, strategic places, right? So comment below. The code word is peace. Just type peace in the comments and I will message you and make sure you get this list. So I'm Laurie Morse, a 30-year practitioner of Chinese medicine and director of the Sacred Health Academy, where we teach spirit-centered women struggling with fatigue, pain, and stress how to awaken your birthright of sacred health. And yes, that's a thing. So that you can live with energy, ease in your body, peace, and purpose, no matter how many years you have gathered. Stress sucks, literally. It sucks the life out of us. And here's one medical definition of stress: stress is a feeling of emotional or physical tension. And we all know that feeling of tension, right? It can come from an event, a thought that makes us feel frustrated, angry, or nervous. Stress is the body's reaction to a challenge or a demand. In short bursts, stress can be positive, such as when it helps us avoid danger or meet a deadline. But here's what must be in place. We're going to talk about this to turn chronic stress on its head in the moment. Like meditation is great, the Calm app is great. These practices are really good and they actually help with the steps that we're going to be talking about. But let's be honest, we all need like an in the moment thing. So listen up. Step number one is, and wait, before I tell you the steps, I want to say that your mind, your human mind, is going to think things like, I already know this, and this is just so simple. But here's the deal. If you're not doing these 5 or similar things to these 5 steps, I'm not attached to them being these 5 steps, but they'll point you in the right direction if you want to change them up a little bit. But I happen to know that these 5 steps work and they can be done, especially as you get better at it, they can be done in an instant. They can be done anywhere, anytime. Nobody has to know you're doing it. And they do the job, right? Like they get the job done. So don't let your human mind talk you out of doing them because you feel like they're too simple. Step number 1 is be present, right? Like we're so in autopilot that we don't give ourselves the gift of being present. We can only notice we're in stress, we're having a stress response, that we're like gripped by stress when we're present. They call that sometimes being a witness or being in the observer mode. We just have to know that it's happening, right? Stress is almost always based on past programming. So the simple act of bringing yourself to the moment, the present moment, no matter what it is, it's not going to hurt you, dissolves a lot of that stress right there, right? So be present. Step number 1. Step number 2, slow your breathing down, because that signals to your body that you are safe, and that's important. When your body or when your breath starts increasing in pace, your body doesn't feel safe and it will go into a stress response, right? Like there's a whole cascade of chemicals that happen when we activate a stress response. And those chemicals are corrosive. They're not good. It's what's causing a lot of our chronic health problems, right? So when you slow your breathing down and you signal to your body that you're safe, there's no lion chasing you. There's no robber attacking you, right? Like you can just be with what is in the moment. And I promise you, you'll figure out, especially connected to your higher self, you'll figure out what a next best good step is, no matter what's happening. This idea of breath, it's kind of a big deal. We just think, okay, well, we're doing it all the time anyway. Obviously, we wouldn't be alive if we weren't. It's an oxygen thing, and a carbon dioxide release, and okay, that's about it, right? But if you've done anything with meditation or, mindfulness or calming, you have scratched the surface about how potent a breath is. I literally could talk with you till midnight about breath. Don't worry, I'm not going to do that, but I do want to say that breath, while it is an oxygen intake mechanism, it also is giving you access to cosmic life force and essence in the atmosphere around you that you can't possibly know about in your human mind, right? So please elevate your what's that word when we have your opinion? That's the word. Elevate your opinion of breath and hang out with it here and there throughout the day so that you get to know like really how much it has to offer you. Okay, enough said. That was step 2, breath. Slow your breathing down so your body can have a fighting chance that it knows that it's safe and keep you at least in neutral, but ideally give you access to the other branch of the nervous system that has all the goods, right? That's where the treasure is, the healing, a different cascade of chemicals that gives you a completely different experience in your moment. Step number 3, drop your awareness low in your body. So you can, we're churning in our head so much. This is literally where the stress gets activated, is in our human mind, our ego mind, where we're just churning and churning, and there's a tension, and there's just this pinging and bouncing around like a pinball machine in our head. But when we lower our awareness, so I like to put my hand on my belly. You can't see that, but I'm putting my hand on my belly. You can even put two hands on your belly, right? And that just sort of it's like a counterbalance to the head. So it just kind of gives it actually gives your body a way of being in on the game, because all the wisdom and all the intelligence is in all the cells of our body, and there's trillions of those cells, right? So when we drop our awareness low in our body, we engage that part of our body versus cutting it off by only being in our head. So it's kind of a big deal. So step number 3, drop your awareness in your body. Step number 4, just do a quick scan and find any tension in your body and release it. And the way I do that is that, wherever I feel there's a tension, I just, on my exhale, I kind of relax that part of my body. If it's a ball of energy that's kind of, stuck somewhere in my body, I breathe into it. I actually breathe light into it. And then on my exhale, I release it. I open it. I soften it. Now, in the quick time that you're doing this, you may get it all the way soft, and you may have a few more breaths work to do around it, and maybe that's a bigger, deeper layer that needs a little bit more work. That's, another thing we do in the Sacred Health Academy. But it's very important that you know where these sort of pockets of tension are, and do the work, and, play with releasing and softening that. So that's step 4, find and release tension in your body. Step 5 is connect. And I have to tell you, you can't leave this step out. Like, this is the step that makes all of the other ones work. This is the pièce de résistance, if you will. Connect with your higher self, connect with your higher presence, and invite light from your higher self to flow in. The way I do it is I open, I don't pretend, I intend that the top of my head is opening like a funnel to receive this waterfall of light that is of the highest healing frequency and life force. And by the way, light carries love, right? Like those are energies that you can't separate. So when it comes, I imagine that it's coming in and flowing in through the top of my head, and just sort of calming my mind, settling my thoughts, and flowing through the entire insides of my body, out the bottoms of my feet, carrying everything with it that I no longer need, stress being one of the things I no longer need, right? And, then if you want to get more elaborate, you can imagine that it's expanding and it's filling your whole body to overflowing, and then it's filling the field around you. I mean, there's a lot of things that you can do with light. Light is a medicine, right? So that's the 5th step, is to invite that light from your higher self. Your higher self has more light than you know what to do with, right? And your higher self, our higher presence, is always willing to release that to us. We have to ask, because we're on a planet of free will. So we always have a strand or a string of light that we're otherwise we'd be dead, right? Like that's the strand of life force that keeps us ticking in our physical experience. But there's more, right? And there's one of these times I'll do a show on light, because there's a lot to say about that. But anyway, that's the 5th step, is to invite that constant waterfall. I mean, you can even play with just this step by when you're chopping vegetables or in the shower, or just doing something that's more, sort of repetitive, and you can place your attention on this. You can just invite light in to wash through you. I highly recommend it. I can't live without it anymore. And I'm inviting you to just play with it, right? So I'm going to give you an extra step. So here is an extra 6th step, which is to give yourself praise, right? Like when you are praising yourself, you're not churning in stress. Know that your mind and your brain actually devolves and contracts with stress, but it evolves and expands with praise. So I'm offering you extra credit here to be generous with the praise that you give yourself. And here's the key. The number 1 secret to making this work. Are you ready? These 5 or 6 steps, do them as many times a day as you possibly can until stress is no longer the boss of you. And honestly, if you were really diligent about this, you could knock this out in just a handful of days, right? And then you just keep doing it because you call the shots. You take the reins. You be the one in control of yourself, not stress. You have everything you need to be the leader of yourself. And believe me, when you're connected to your higher self, your higher wisdom, your higher intelligence, that's connected to the quantum field of the intelligent life force that is the fabric of love, right? There's a lot there for you to draw on when you're connected to it. We call this the source of life too. Sometimes in Chinese medicine, it's called qi. There's a lot of names we could put to it. It doesn't really matter what we call it, but call it we must, and call on it gives us a completely different experience in the moment. You're more powerful than any other form of energy when you're connected to this life force. When you're connected to the source of life, you are more powerful than any other form of energy, including stress, right? So that's just a thing to know, right? Like, okay, if that's a choice I can make in this moment easily enough, then why wouldn't I, right? Stress is actually an addiction. And for many of us, we have to break this habit and heal the addiction. An addiction is nothing more than a compulsive engagement, right? So, like when we compulsively engage in stress, we have to call a spade a spade, and we have to say we're addicted, right? And of course we're addicted. We already know based on research that there are chemicals that get released when we have a stress response that have addictive qualities to them. So if the person you love more than anything on the planet were addicted to, let's say, alcohol or heroin, you would do what you could to help them break that addiction. So here we are on the planet, 2021, 21st century, addicted to stress, most of us. And we have simple ways. I realize that they are simple, but I also know that it isn't always easy because there's so much seduction outside of us that kind of lures us into stress. But I can tell you from personal experience that if you just do this long enough, you won't be as like hooked in as much as you are now, maybe. Like, that's the thing. I want to read you this quote because here's the thing. Living with stress is way harder than engaging these 5 steps and practicing, right? Like, so that let's just say in 2 or 3 weeks you're like good to go. Stress is no longer the boss of you. You're like in the driver's seat, so to speak. So check out this quote. We either make ourselves miserable or we make ourselves strong. The amount of work is the same. So I've said this for years that it's actually as hard or harder to be unwell, to be stressed out, to be in a state of worry constantly, to be tense and have pain. Like, it's harder to live that way than it is to do the work to not be that way, right? So just kind of think about that, if you will. So if you want the succinct list of the steps, we have them available as show notes. That's kind of the code word here. The code word is peace. Type it in the comments and I will connect with you and make sure you get these notes. So we talked about, let's just do a quick recap here. We talked about why stress is not sustainable. There's no sane person on the planet that could argue in favor of chronic stress being anything but trouble. Then we talked about the 5 steps to crush stress, right? And the steps are 1, be present. 2, slow your breathing down so your signals to your body you're safe. 3, be in your body. 4, release tension. 5, connect to your light, your higher self. And then the extra credit was be generous with giving praise to yourself. So those are our 5 steps. Thank you so much for being here. I'll be back next week, same time, same bat channel. And we're going to be, next week is interesting. We're going to talk about how to increase dopamine naturally. So dopamine is a feel-good hormone and a neurotransmitter. It's a gift to your nervous system. So it's actually the perfect thing to talk about after our Peace Up class today, right? Did you know that low dopamine levels can lead to a lack of motivation, to fatigue, to addictive behavior, to mood swings and memory loss. All very stressful, right? So maybe even that's contributing to the stress response that is the constant undercurrent, right? So next week we'll learn how to increase dopamine naturally. So a sacred health journey is yours to take, and I'm here to make sure you don't miss your heart's calling you home to this sacred journey. One step at a time on this path gets you more energy, less pain, less stress and worry, the nutritional lifestyle that you've been trying to make work, and best of all, your birthright of peace and purpose. All without spending years and too much time and money on therapy and supplements and toxic chemicals. Here's the thing, with health, life is beautiful. Without it, it's hard and it sucks, right? So thank you for being you and tending to your sacred health. Not only does tending to your sacred health matter to you and your life, it matters to the world. So I will see you next week, where we'll be talking about how to increase dopamine, be well, and be sacred.